Hey, what's up everybody? It's Chris with Digital REM. In this video we're going to continue to cover the introduction into Blender and the user interface for Blender. So in the previous video we covered the outliner, which is fun. It shows you where all the objects in your scene are. It shows you what you can select. It shows you how you can toggle things on and off, the visibility of things, the renderability of things, if that's a word, and pretty much gives you a good overview of what's in your scene. What do they call it? I can't think of the term what it's called when you're in like the packing industry. But when you have a truck full of products and you have a slip that has everything you're seeing, it's pretty much the same thing. You have that slip that shows everything you're seeing, which is called the outliner. So it's outlining the whole scene. But in this video, as promised, we're going to cover the properties panel, one of my favorite parts, one of the most technical parts, one of the most studied parts of the whole scene. It's the creative part. It's the part that really gets your scene looking exactly how you want to, and it's very important to study this part. Use the user's manual, use the online resources, use the things that you have at your disposal to just learn more and more. There are so many different options. Of course, we're not going to cover them all because it's so deep. But again, use that right click button, go to the online manual, learn more about this different things. There's things a lot of things I don't even know about in this thing. So again, we're just going to touch the surface. So many things to do, so many cheats and hacks and tricks and all kinds of stuff that so many people know by just manipulating different toggling on and off different options. And we're just going to do a quick overview of what the properties panel is and how it's so effective with your production. So we're just going to get right to it. The main goal is to show you where this lives. So even when you open Blender, the whole reason of this whole course is when you open Blender, you know where things are. So when you know where things are, you know where to right click and you know how to get the ball rolling with what you're trying to do or what you're trying to create. So create along, keep creating. So we're going to go over here in the properties panel here. So the properties panel, usually when you open Blender by default, the properties panel is over here on the right bottom side. If you can also, I want to keep this 3D scene. I was going to make it bigger, but I'm going to just keep this 3D scene so you can see how it affects the 3D scene. And I'm actually going to, remember we have the header here. We can put this in the, maybe like a render mode. There. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is go over all the different tabs here. So this tab I rarely use. This tab rarely ever used, but this is a selection tab. So it has like your workspace things for your workspace, your filters, add-ons, custom properties, stuff like that. Never used any of this. It is what it is. This one, very important. This tab is very important. What is this tab called? The render tab. Essentially, when you hit that render button or create those images and make this realistic scene, realistic car, realistic whatever, it all comes from all of your render settings. All of it. Cycles is usually what I like to use personally. Eevee is a new renderer that came out with the Blender 2.8. It's a real-time renderer. It allows you to move and with the lighting and everything. It's cool. I haven't found a reason to use it yet. I wanted to find a reason to use it, but the production is different. So Cycles production is a little different from Eevee production. So I'm familiar with Cycles production, so I just kind of stick with Cycles production. And I tend to go for the more realistic look, so I stick with Cycles. Even though Eevee it can be kind of realistic, but I'm not used to the production yet. So you can learn more about that in other videos or later videos. But just keep that in mind. Cycles is what you out of the box. Blender's first renderer. You have, again, there's so many options. I'm just trying to go over very vaguely everything, right? So you have your different device. So you can render with your CPU or your GPU. Rendering with either or. If you have the ability to render with a GPU, definitely render with a GPU. It's a little faster. The renders, depending on your scene, how large your scene is, it, like, say if I have a million of these monkey heads, to render that image might take an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, maybe less, maybe more. I don't know. I'm just guesstimating. I would have to hit the render button to know. But in comparison to if I render it now, it might take like 1 second to render, less than a second to render. With being able to toggle the CPU or GPU, it uses your graphics card to actually calculate that, so it can potentially render faster. So that 4-hour window to take that would take to render a million monkey heads might take 30 minutes if you have the right GPU. So it's a I don't want to say IT thing, but it is an IT thing. It's something, computing power. You have to understand your computer power, your specs and things like that. So get familiar. That's all I can say. In this 3D world, it's not all about the pen and the paper. It's very important as well. That's why I feel this industry is technical and artistic at the same time. So you have to kind of know a computer and know how to be a designer at the same time, and then be able to turn that on and off. Yeah, so sampling being just like dots per image or DPI in Photoshop. You can crank this all the way up, so essentially the more samples you have, the more samples you have, the more crisp, the more realistic the image is going to be. Realistic the image will look, and more accurate it will look. In contrast, your rendering time will increase. So it's a mathematic. You have to balance it. It's a balance in that. Light paths definitely is a. I don't want to get into it, but light paths essentially is. I don't want to get too far into it. I'm gonna get into it. But light paths are essentially when you create lights, you can manipulate how the lights act. So if you have a reflection, how many times it reflects on different objects, the glossiness, the transparency, the number of bounces, and all this affects the render times and the render quality. So, and you sometimes if you knock the let's say the bounces down, you might increase your render time. If you increase the bounces, you might decrease your render time but increase your quality. So caustics, again, that's just like glass. It's creating that just like when you look through a glass and it's not clear, but it's like warped. The light that goes through it warps, and it creates another light path, a path of lights, and that's another calculation. So the computer calculates light directly onto an object, but then through that object, then recalculates how it's dispersed when it comes out of the other end of the object, which is all mathematics, all computation, and increases render time. So that's caustics. These are all the render settings. Volumes, I'm not sure. Oh, volumes is essentially if you have a light, just like if you're in a fog and you see this street light, and how the dew or the fog let's say it has a glow around it, or the fog it seems like it's emitting more light, or it's glowing around the light essentially, but it's really absorbing all the light around it. That's essentially what this is. So you have the ability to increase the fog step size, so how accurate that is. Hair, again, hair is hair. Hair has dynamics. It flows. It does its thing. It has its own like light bounces, which I tend to turn that off because it saves render time. Simplify, I usually turn that on, but simplify usually essentially it speeds up the render time by by averaging a lot of these light paths and light things, a lot of these things that are going on, it averages it for you. Motion blur, I usually do that after the fact, so I don't really do the motion blur in my renders, but you can. Exposure to film, again, this is all getting into the filter of how the image looks, just like when you're in Instagram and you apply a filter to your photo. Similar but more advanced than that. I'm just trying to simplify it, but more advanced than that. Transparency, this allows you to render transparency, so you can essentially just render this object with a transparent background. Let's do that real quick. Render this object, the checkers being a transparent background. Transparent meaning it has no value, so essentially you can make this a t-shirt or something and it would have nothing behind it besides what you actually render, or you can lay this on top of something else or composite this into something else and it will look like it's living in that environment. So that's adding transparent, which that is usually always on, so keep that in mind. Performance thread, you can increase this tiles. This is usually for when you're rendering. You can increase that, go over that, and I definitely suggest you do more research about that, but that helps at times. So if you're using GPU render, I suggest you get familiar with the tile size. File render, save buffer. Never use these. I haven't used these before. I can't say never use these. I haven't used them before. Baked, haven't used it yet. I'm sure I'm gonna have to. I'm sure eventually I will have to bake the textures to put into games or something like that. So that's probably where this would live. But we'll see when we get further down the road when that happens. But essentially, when you UV an object and create it and make it all realistic with scratches and everything, well, when you take it into a game, all of it has to live in one image file. So when you UV something, it might bake it out to one image file, full resolution, and that's what I'm thinking that is. So, but I haven't used it for in Blender yet, so I'm assuming, making an assumption. Freestyle, that's one of the new things, or one of the things that's unique about Blender that I haven't seen in any other program, is Freestyle allows you to, and you see I'm going back to the render, that there's a transparent background. All of this checkered is transparent, so I can put this over the top of anything and anything behind it will be behind it and it will look like the monkey is sitting on top of it. Freestyle allows you to, when you render that, it'll create outline around, excuse me, it'll create an outline around it, and that's unique to Blender as well. You can look more into Freestyle, which I more than likely will make a video about Freestyle in another lesson or other videos, so leave it at that. Color management is very important as well. So sRGB is one of my favorite color, is the most basic, not one of my favorite, one of the most basic, but Filmic Log is one of the ones that I use here in Blender, or Filmic. Where is it at? Where's all my options? Not Filmic Log. I'll put it back at sRGB. But essentially, you can create the color management of your scene. So just like you have CMYK, you could do sRGB, which is usually the industry standard when you're creating graphics or videos or something like that. I'm looking for like my Filmic. I'm not sure if I don't know what I did. So but yeah, that's the render settings. So then you have this tab after, right under it, you have the dimensions. So dimensions being, you know, when you set your image, your rendering image for 1920 by 1080 at 100%, your start frame, your end frame. You can make stereoscopy, which is, that's the 3D, so you have two different lenses. So if you want to create for Oculus Rift or something like that, you can do that. Your file type, where your output is for your images, the type of file you're putting out, the color depth, the compression, the metadata, so you can, you know, put your metadata in your image, so when people try to take your designs, you have the metadata included or embedded in your image. Or when you're using it for SEO, it works better. The view layer tab is getting it more into the after you render your scene, what's included in the shader or the compositor node, better yet, not the shader, but the compositor node. So you have the diffuse pass, the glossy pass, the transmission pass. Diffuse being like the basic color, no reflection, no specular, no light bouncing off of it. You can add filters to that, you know, and this is all going to be in the composite node. So these will be all the options you have in the composite node, which you can go down this list and see everything you want to do with that. You have the scene. So you can set the units. Usually I'd set the units to imperial, and that makes it at least feet. So it'll be feet instead of meters, mass to pounds, time to seconds. Add gravity to the scene, just if you want to do physics, something falling, something breaking, anything like that. You have the gravity. You can add audio to your scene, rigid bodies, which that's a physics thing. Custom properties, I'm not sure. And I'm going to end on this world node for this video. So in the world node, you can set the background of the world. You can add the ambient occlusion. You can see the ambient occlusion there. Ambient occlusion being like in the corner of your wall. It has a little bit of shadow there, but it's not necessarily light, but it's just the shadow of the two objects coming together and how close they are. So when two objects are close together, they usually create somewhat of a shadow. So that's what ambient occlusion does. You can toggle the ray visibility, so you can where it doesn't show the cameras or the diffuse or the specular of objects, you know, in your renders. So you can set that up. Surface settings, volume sampling, viewport display color. Viewport display color is basically how your viewport looks if it didn't have the transparent background on it. So we're going to go ahead and set that back to where it was. So essentially that's pretty much the world settings we're going to cover in the next, or some of the property settings. In the next video, we're going to cover some more of the property settings. So you can do like actually, we're just going to go ahead and cover in this video. I'm just get it all over with. It's really no reason to draw this out. Let's just, you waited for it, let's get it done. So this properties panel. So when you have an object selected, each object has its own properties that you can manipulate. So in the properties, you just go to this little box, which just think of this as the box that the scene started with. So this is the object. You can change the location, rotation, just like when we had in the side panel here. You can change all of this information in this properties panel for the object. Same thing. Even more options actually. So you do the relation to it, how it relates to other things. So when you want to parent it to something else, you just snap it to another thing. You can add it into a collection here. So if you have a collection of a new collection, you can put it in that collection. Instancing being if you have a duplicate of it, you can create a duplicate, but if you edit one, it edits all of them. So you can create instances. motion path. I haven't used this before. I'm not sure exactly what this is, but I'm sure it's an animation thing. So you can probably set some type of motion path and calculate it and apply it to another object or a similar object. Motion blur, I'm not sure. That's the animation thing. So, and I don't apply motion blur in my render. I usually wait to in compositing to apply motion blur. So that's just personal preference. Control. So visibility, it shows the visibility in the show and viewport. You can toggle that on and off. Same thing as when we did it before. You can toggle it on and off. Up here, ray visibility, that means like if you in the render, if it shows like in the camera, does it show the diffuse? Does it show the glossy? Does it show the shadows at all? I don't know if you can. I noticed it, but I don't know if you can notice it. Viewport display, just all the different properties that you can use or manipulate for the for an object. More than likely you will find it here. If it's not in the objects, this menu here, it's not in the edit menu. If any of these, more than likely it will be in this objects menu. All right, this is the fun part. It reminds me of 3D Max or Cinema 4D. They're called modifiers. Maya lacked modifiers when I was using Maya, and that's one of the things that I really wish. I don't know. I liked Maya, but that's one of the things I was kind of envious about with 3D Max and Cinema 4D. They had modifiers. So that being said, let's go ahead and go to the Modifiers tab. In Modifiers tab, you have this drop down menu here, which has all of these other options. And all these other options, I suggest you do your homework and look how to use all of these other ones. I'll definitely create more videos to some of these different modifiers. You'll see me using some of these different modifiers in future videos and previous videos even. But the main thing is to show you where this lives. So in this Modifiers tab, you find all kinds of stuff that allows you to modify your object without destroying it or without editing it where you can't go back. They call it non-destructive, but it allows you to do a quick modification or modifier to allow you to create a visual without manipulating or doing a lot of extra work. So it's easy to rapidly prototype something. So we're going to do a modifier. Let's do an example. So you have an array modifier. An array, I could sit here and duplicate multiple objects over and over and over again, or I can just apply an array modifier, and every modifier as you apply it, it adds to the list, and you can turn them on and off like so. Again, like I said, you're able to change things quickly. But with the array modifier, again, I can create 10 of these heads by just hitting 10. That easy. And we have 10 duplicates of a head. I can spread them out even further from each other. I can move them back and forth from each other. I can do all of this stuff without having to manually go in, duplicate, move, duplicate, move, duplicate, move, duplicate, move, duplicate, move, over and over again. Get it? So it saves you time. It makes it very easy to do things. You can edit multiple things at the same time. And you can apply them later on, and then when you get it to where you like. So that's one of the good things about modifiers. And you have all of these different options. So we'll just I guess I'll read them. So you have the modify modifiers. So you have the data transfer, the mesh cache, mesh sequence cache, normal edit, weighted normal, UV project, UV wrap. UV project I definitely use. UV project is very important. That's a pretty cool feature about this one. I will have other future videos with the UV project, but keep that noted. UV project, look into it. UV wrap. UV wrap is also an important one. They're both important. UV project is just awesome. It really is. So vertex weight edit, vertex weight mix, vertex weight proximity, and then you have the generate. Generate being just like I did the array modifier. When you have an object that you just want to manipulate or edit in some type of way without having to go in and move faces or grab edges and move them, usually you'll find things like that here in the generate, how you would edit a mesh or something or an object. So you have the array modifier, which we just did, an array of things, an array of objects. The bevel modifier, which applies a bevel to the object. Boolean, which does a boolean. We can look into all of these. Look into all of these generate modifiers. They're very important for modeling. So Boolean modifier, a build modifier, decimate modifier, edge split modifier, which I use often, edge split. Mask modifier, a mirror modifier is very important as well. Multi-resolution, remesh modifier, screw modifier, skin modifier, solidify modifier is a good one. Subdivision surface is very important. I'm gonna actually show you that one. Subdivision surface allows you to, this is the most important why modifiers are so good to have. So you see how now, let's turn it off. No, let's put it on. First put it on a higher resolution, 3 or something. But let's turn it off. This is what our model looks like. Look at that. Very rough, very simple, very low poly, right? Then when you add this subdivision surface modifier, it gets very, very smooth. Look at that. I mean, I'm attempting to show you the mesh. I don't know why I can't remember how to do the mesh part. Let me do this. Okay, go back into object mode. There we go. So you see how much extra, and I did that by going into, again, the properties of the object, and in the viewport display I hit wireframe, and it showed me the wireframe of what it would look like. So this is always going to be on screen now, but it showed me how this changes. So we're going to go back to modifiers where the little wrench is. So the modifier, I'm going to toggle it off. This is what it is without it. Subdivision. This is what it looks like with it. More faces, more calculations, more faces to work with. Again, more calculations where now it will take more rendering time, but again, you get more of a realistic character. And that's all simply by clicking on a modifier. As I showed before, it saves you so much time by being able to apply a modifier, change things, and say, I don't like this, or I do like this, or just build it out with the modifier applied. And then when you get to where you like it, save it all and apply the modifiers, that's how the workflow goes. You pretty much work inside of the modifiers. Then when you get to where you like it, apply the modifiers, which you do that by just simply hitting apply, and it'll apply the modifiers. And it's now, when you go into edit mode, you have to edit all of these points. God. Remember when I did the pull up the head part? You have to hit each individual point, which is not ideal. It's better to have this modifier applied if it ever goes back to it. I guess it's not going to go back to it, but I'll apply the modifier. So that's how you do that. But usually you would have the modifier sitting there and work while you have the modifier over here and not apply it until the end. Alright, so let's continue. So we have context. Yeah, particles. So you can apply a particle system why is it? Maybe it's because I'm recording or something. Alright, so you can apply a particle system. So this is particles, and how you apply a particle system, and this is similar to LOTM, so just get used to this interface here. Note it, used to this interface here. There's nothing there, but if you click the plus button, it'll apply or add to the list a particle system. So you can essentially create particles. Like, just hit the play button. I don't even know what the particles are going to be on. It's probably way too much mesh for these particles. They're like, what the heck? But let's go ahead and just delete the array and just work with one mesh right now. How about that? Boom. You see, now he's sweating. We got particles of sweat coming off of the monkey's head, because we applied the particle system to this object. And each thing you select, all of these objects, all of these settings change. All of these settings under the object change for each object you select. Everything above stays the same for the entire scene. So, yeah, he's sweating now. So we're gonna go through the particles real quick. So, I mean, try to go through the settings real quick. Particles can get deep, real deep. If you're interested in particles, do your homework, learn more about it. We might, more than likely, we'll do a video later on, just trying to cover where it lives. So you can cache particles. That's after you simulate, make a simulation. It speeds up after you cache it. It'll speed up your rendering time, because it doesn't have to recalculate where the physics of the particles. Velocity, you can change the velocity, how far they come out or how fast they come out. The rotation, if it rotates while it's coming out. Physics, what type of physics are applied. Man, the list goes on and on. Render, viewport display, children, field height, force field settings, vertex groups, force field settings, more than likely being like any effects that you have. So if you have a vortex or something, you're trying to make a tornado, those settings will be there, or how to at least manipulate those settings will be there. Textures you can apply. Custom properties. I haven't used it, but I'm assuming you could write a Python script for your custom property or for your physics. Alright, I'm gonna just delete this because it's too much calculations going on while trying to record screen. Alright, so now we're on to the enable physics. So right under the physics, when you create a particle system, you have like all the physics settings. So you can essentially have objects that'll be force fields or collision surfaces, or it'll be a cloth. You're defining what that object is in regards to physics or particle systems. So you're defining what that is. Is it a soft body? Is it a fluid? Is it some type of liquid? Is it smoke? Is it a rigid body? Is it a rigid body constraint? I mean, you're defining what the particle system is and how it's being calculated when you hit that play button. And that's how particles work. You hit the play button, see what you have. If it's not what you're looking for, you toggle some settings, hit the play button again, see what you have, until you get to where you like, then you bake that out so it'll always be the same when you're ready to render. That's how the particle system process works in a nutshell. You can add object constraints. I haven't done this yet. I'm assuming it would be very beneficial, especially with if you're doing some type of mechanical animation or some type of animation. Yeah, I say just look into it, how you can use this. I'm not super familiar with this right now, but again, even looking at it, I can give a good guesstimate how you can use these things. Like the camera solver, you can more than likely have a node where you animate the actual object or the thing because it's parented to the camera. Or follow a track, you can create a path and then have your object or camera or wherever follow that path, so it's stuck on wherever the path that you define. Object solver, I don't know that one. It transforms, location, rotation. It'll do more than likely. It'll just duplicate if you rotate or if you move one thing, the other thing will follow for location. Rotation, if you rotate one thing, the other thing will rotate. I mean, you just really look into these and how you might be able to use them. It might make your process faster, or it might be overkill for what you're trying to do. But it's up to you. There's multiple ways to do everything in this program. Vertex groups. This is getting a lot deeper into it, but you definitely need to know about this. So vertex groups allow you to take individual, like, say I want his ear. I can essentially take his ear and make his ear a vertex group. And say ear. And that'll be a vertex group, so I can essentially select his ear at any time or assign to vertex group. So deselect, select, deselect, select. And this is good for, like, again, if you just want to have, let's say, I'm making up something off the top of my head, but you have a character and you just want to be able to change his head out real quick. Well, you can create vertex groups for just the head and select the head, delete it or hide that selection, and pop in another vertex group with a different head, and you'd have the same body, of course, but again, or you just change all different types of stuff, but you kind of get the picture. You select something, you can create a group out of the vertices of that selection. Shape keys, same thing. When you're creating face structures and shape keys, we'll get into that. These are more advanced things here, but we'll get into that. But again, you just good to know where they're at. UV maps, you can create multiple UV maps here, and again, this is in the object data group. So UV maps, very important. Vertex color, never used it, but I'm sure you can use it in some type of way. Face mask, I haven't used that, but that would be interesting. Auto smooth, normals, haven't used that, but I would definitely click it on. No, it doesn't hurt. Texture space, I haven't used that. Geometry data, custom properties. So again, you have all of these options, and do the best you can with what you got. One of my favorite parts about Blender, which every 3D program with the favorite part, is the material. So applying a material. So just like before, when I said most of your menus are going to look like this, so get used to this interface here. We currently don't have a material applied. If you want to apply a material, either you can hit new here and it'll apply material. So first, let's do my first matte. My first matte. I called it my first matte, and you can add freestyle lines if you have the freestyle toggled on in the renderer. You get this is a preview of what your material looks like currently. But this is the most important part to when you're applying the material. This is the lead into making a shader. A shader essentially is how your object will look. So it's combining the lighting, combining the lighting calculations, so the reflections, the caustics, and everything else is combining all of that with the diffuse map, with everything else, and creating a material essentially. So the texture as well is creating a material. So that's essentially what you're gonna do here. All of these things are materials are made of so many different layers of information. So you'd have to break down the layers of information, and this might be a video within itself, which more than likely I will make a video about materials, just how a material is structured and how material is set up, and how the layers, so you can understand how the layering or render layers should be set up so it can mimic your material. And you'll be able to bake materials to look more realistic. But to continue on, so we did our first material. You can apply multiple materials by just applying another material. You can apply multiple materials to an object. So let's say let's say I want this material to be this part. I'm gonna just assign that material to his ear. So we assign, and everything else should be the material color from before. And I'm probably confusing you because I keep bouncing into object mode and edit mode. So I'm gonna take this wireframe off so you can see better when I'm going into edit mode and object mode. So I'll probably just slide this all the way back over. So with the material, where were we at? Material. So with the material, we have the one applied to his ear, which if we go to the base color and let's just change it to green or something, nothing happens. And why does nothing happen? Because we're in solid mode. I did that on accident and on purpose at the same time. I'm glad I did it though. So we're in display solid mode. What we want to be in is display either look dev mode or in the render mode. So we're gonna go in the render mode because I usually don't do in the look dev mode because I want to see exactly what my material looks like. I want it to match this as much as possible. So I tend to go into rendered mode. So and this again, when you're, well, I'm gonna have to be in look dev mode. Again, when you are selecting things, it's ideal to be in X-ray mode, so you would select both sides, kind of like I talked about in the previous lesson. So now that I have both sides selected, I can select the material I want to select and hit assign, and it should have changed to be the full ear, like so. Oh man, I wish I didn't apply that subdiv surface. Actually, because it's making this chug, I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I'm going to add a new object. I'm going to just do a cube. Keep it simple. So the other part about this is, even though now I've created a new object, this is another thing. It's a good lesson, even though I want to start over. Even though I created the other object, all the materials are gone, but you don't have to recreate them by hitting plus and plus again. You can hit this browse materials to be linked, browsing materials you already made, and you see the materials that we have my first mat and that material 2 that I made, and we can apply those materials. So we're going to apply this, my first material first. We're going to add another material. We're going to go to apply that material 2, that green. We're going to assign that green to right there, to that side, like that. Now I'm gonna do a quick bevel modifier and a subdiv. Not solidify. Subdiv. Three segments. All right. So we can get probably some better lighting, a little bit better lighting here. So see, we applied the material to the object here. Even though it's a little off because again it's trying to calculate. Well, more likely it's off because I applied it afterwards. So let's go back real quick, delete this, get out of edit mode. And if you see an error like that, if you see an error, you're trying to delete something, just read the error. It gives you the error every time. So it says I need to be out of edit mode, so we're going to get out of edit mode, delete the material, boom. Now we're going to apply the material again to see if that changes. It's still messed up, but okay, whatever. Forget it. We're just going to keep it like this. Alright. Wanted something a little... I was trying to make something a little more realistic, but... or at least catches a little more light. We'll just do it like this. Alright, thank you for sitting through this real quick while I try to get it prepared for you. So, now you have the material. We create a material, so I just showed you how to create two materials, have one material or two materials on one object. Now, the first thing you want to do when creating a new material in general is click the surface. So when you click surface, you're essentially deciding what type of material this is. You have all of these different options: add shader, background, diffuse, emission, glass, glossy, hair, hold out, mixed shader, principled BSDF, principled hair, volume, specular, tune, translucence, transparent. I mean, you can read the list yourself. The main one I suggest using to start off with is Principal BSDF. Start off with this one. Unless you're creating glass, then use Glass BSDF. You can more than likely get away with a glossy by using Principal BSDF. Tune shader, if you're going for that look, that's more advanced, or I would say more advanced, but if you're going for that look, you know, already have an idea what you're doing. So we're gonna go Principal BSDF. Then you have all of these options here. This is the best one so you can see all of the options, because each one of them has different options. But see, you have a metallic coat, a specular coat. So let's see. Let's do a we need a light. So we have this light. If you can see the light, that's the light. Here's the texture. And let's actually make this other one darker so it doesn't compete. So we're gonna click on the texture we want to make darker. It has all of its values still. We're just gonna make that dark, like so. So that green pops out more. But you can see the specular coming off of the dark part and the specular coming off the green. So again, let's go back to the green. You can increase the specular. I would never have it that high, really. But you could decrease the roughness. And then when you decrease the roughness, you can see it's getting more shiny. It's like it's being polished or something. And now if you had an environment, it will reflect what's in the environment on that object. So you can see the one that has the roughness, the black, and then you have the one that doesn't have the roughness, the green. And you have all of these different options, so you can just go down the list and pretty much see how that works. So again, that's the material. So setting up the material, so now you know how to apply material so you can create multiple objects. Go into edit mode. Select the face or select the faces. So I'm gonna select the face on this side. Select the material you want and hit assign, and it'll assign to those faces that you selected. And that's how you assign a material. Simple as that. So create something. I mean, you're gonna get a hang of it, but create anything. Create a letter, a box, something, and just apply different colors to each side, and you'll see how this works. Because then when you learn how to apply materials, then you can go into making it look realistic and adding different, getting more realistic in the creation of materials, which is called the shader. So the shader allows you to take all of these options here and really manipulate them even further to get exactly what you're looking for and more realistic materials. So again, I think this covers, let me make sure. Oh, you have a brush tab here. I've never used. Well, let's see what happens. So it looks like when you have a brush tab, you're creating some type of brush, and you can define what type of brush it is. So you have wood. Let's say it's a wood. Okay, so we're creating a wood here, and it has the wood options. So either we want to blend it with the original, bands, rings. You know, you have all of these options. You can definitely just click, just like I'm doing right now. I've never used this. Just click on it. Just click on it, break stuff, see what happens. Like really, really though, just click it. You get a ring. Let's do a saw. I'm just clicking. I might as well just close my eyes if I knew where the thing is, but just click on things. I didn't really like the saw. I like the ring noise, but okay, ring noise. Let's try that one. So ring noise. So how do I apply this? That's my question right now. So how do I apply this texture thing? We know where it's at. We know how to make one. Better yet, I think I know how to apply this. So we're doing a quick trial and error. This is free, just because we're talking about it. Texture paint. So when you go into object mode, you go into edit mode, sculpt mode, vertex mode, weight paint mode. Let's try this texture paint mode. This might give us something. I guess it doesn't. Missing textures detected. I'm not sure what that means. So we tried. I broke stuff, but that's essentially what you're gonna do. You're gonna get in here. You're gonna click stuff. You're gonna try stuff. You're gonna do stuff, and you might find something that you're like, "Whoa, that's kind of cool," and ride with it. Explore. This is like when you were a kid and you played with blocks. Just explore. There's nothing. There's no pressure when creating. So take the pressure off and just create, and then you'll become more familiar with how to navigate this Blender. And then once you figure out how to navigate Blender, you can put your work out there, and people will start to actually ask you to do a project for them, something similar that you did before, so you would already know. So again, as you see, there's so many different options that you can do in Blender. Just get in there and do stuff. Just click stuff and do stuff and figure it out. And then as you get more familiar and more acclimated to where things are at, just take on new challenges and learn more. So I'm gonna wrap that up. The properties panel, which was a lot, but I'm gonna wrap that up there. With a broken texture thing, which honestly I just don't know how to do it. I'm pretty sure I'm not doing it right, but that's the name of the game. I've never used it. I probably won't ever use it, but I just want to try it out for just a demonstration of how you should feel about when you see something you've never used. Just click on it, just try it, just think it through, like what this possibly might do, and it might do what you want, it might do more. So keep that in mind. I appreciate you listening. I hope you enjoyed this lesson as far as the introductory to the 3D interface of Blender. We still need to get into the shaders and all of the editor types, but essentially this is what you'll need for just to get started in Blender. So with that, I'm gonna leave you there. Actually, I'm gonna leave you with one more extra token, which is when you do create, that might be biting off way more than you could chew right now. So we're just gonna leave it there. So again, I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching. my camera wrapped me up for me. But anyway, like I was saying, thank you for watching. I look forward to seeing you in future videos. Later, y'all. Peace.